All right, so just to start off, I want to ask, what piqued your early interest in psychology in general?
I grew up doing equestrian show jumping. I started when I was 8 years old, and I thought that was going to be life. I did it for 13 years. I was right from the beginning, I was honestly really blessed to enter into that sport at a high level. We just happened to start riding at a farm where there was a high level rider himself who was one of my coaches. And so, right from the beginning, I really got immersed in the sport. My school bus would actually drop me off at the barn every day to go ride, take my lessons. I would do my homework there. And then, actually, at the time, my parents were riding as well. So, my mom worked in New York City and my dad worked in Philly. So, they would both come and ride their horses, and then we'd eventually go home. So, I thought that was going to be my future. Eventually, we got our own barn. We had several horses. I was kind of, training, if you will, to become a high level athlete. Thought about having my own farm, coaching others, going to the Olympics. My parents still wanted me to go, of course, to college and get a degree. And so I started as a business major because I thought, having a business background would be useful. And really, it didn't resonate. The marketing aspect of it resonated with me. I kind of liked that because now that I look back at it, there's some psychology to marketing. But the business, just general business stuff at the time didn't really resonate. And I took a couple psychology courses and I just fell in love with it. I always, I think, been one of those, I'm an introvert. I'd been fascinated by watching people, observing people. So I just really became enamored with that. And when I actually was still riding and kind of thinking about changing my major, I actually was thinking about maybe going into forensic psych. My dad had tried out for the FBI and had made it actually pretty far in the process. And that was always really interesting to me. And so I did my senior year of college, my internship for my interview class in a prison. It was my job to interview people for their bail hearings. And I found it really interesting. But at the same time that this kind of part of my life was happening, my riding career was really in turmoil. Right before I had gone to college, I had the worst experience, couple months of experience I'd ever had riding. And it was a really a big challenge for me. I'd always been extremely confident, very bold, no fear whatsoever. And after a few bad falls and a couple bad experiences, that completely changed. And so I tried to ride for a few more years. I didn't know such a thing as sports psychology existed at the time, so I really didn't get much support in trying to work my way through these challenges. And eventually, the summer before my senior year of college, I decided to quit. And at that time, I had a professor in psychology who said, there's this field of sports psychology. Maybe you want to look into that. And that was it. That was my shift. I spent my senior year not riding and having this whole other life of not being that person who had that identity. And, my life was really wrapped up in that. Had one little inkling of, okay, maybe I'll go back to riding. That really did not go well. And so a new dream, new career path was born. Once I started looking into sports psychology, I thought, well, if I'm not going to be able to have this future career that I wanted to, and this dream that I wanted to, maybe I can help other people navigate the things that I couldn't navigate, or I didn't get the support navigating, and help them not have to, go through what I did, or end their careers in the way that I did.
Definitely. So what pushed you to continue after undergrad to go on to get your master's and then eventually get your PhD, both from Florida State?
It became very clear to me early on, AKA via an argument with my father, about psychology not being a field like business where you could just step out of undergrad and go to work. Or, even a real clear path. He had gone to law school, so had to have extra schooling and all that. But to him, I think the idea of psychology was very scary. Like, how are you going to have a career or life in that field? So I recognized, I think, early on when I made that switch of majors that I was going to have to pursue more education. And so I applied to a couple schools, and at the same time, my parents had been kind of doing the snowbird thing down to Florida, and decided to move there full time once I finished undergrad. So Florida State seemed like a really good fit because I'd always grown up being pretty close to my parents. So it seemed like a nice fit to be able to still be somewhat close to them, and also go to a really good program. And when I went there for my master's, I think one of the key things that stood out to me was, how much applied experience I got and supervision I got to. I mean, and literally from the beginning of the program, we were able to shadow, other students, master students and PhD students. Then, second year of master's, we were able to start collaborating with the other students and starting to work on practicing our skills and getting supervision for it. And so already, as a new master's student, I was getting a lot of exposure to the field, right? And getting outside of the classroom learning, which was really useful. And then I decided to stay because I thought, well, it's been great being here for my master's. I can't see why I would really go somewhere else. And I had also kind of gotten an opportunity to, through one of the professors that was there at the time and is now back there again, Dr. Dave Eccles, gave me the opportunity to work in a research lab studying expert performance. That was actually really a combined effort from the cognitive psychology department and our sports psychology department. And that was headed by Dr. Anders Ericsson, who is the world's, expert on experts and memory. So I spent 3 years studying expert performance in SWAT police officers and critical care nurses. By the time I left my PhD, I had so many hours of applied practice with all different types of clients and groups and teams and all these different things. I had even gotten some experience mentoring the other younger students in the program and really enjoyed that. I'd gotten some teaching experience by that time. I know at the time I didn't really see the benefit of this, but now I really do. I got a certificate in research methods and another one in program evaluation, which I make a lot of use of in applied practice. So it was really a wonderful place to be able to start my career, but also the way that I kind of look back at it now and realize how grateful I am for it. I didn't recognize at the time, and I certainly didn't set out for this to happen, that I really got such a multifaceted background in the field and in related areas that have made a world of difference in the trajectory of my career and the types of things that I do with clients or I'm able to do with clients. So it was a great place to land at and to stay at.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it. So correct me if I'm wrong. After this, Barry University kind of seemed to be your first stop in the sports psychology world. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
When I was coming out of grad school, the field was starting to expand in terms of applied jobs, in particular, for example, like IMG was growing there, kind of mental coach group, if you will. There weren't the jobs that are now available in Major League Baseball were not there at the time. The jobs that are available in the military, that initial program that started that was just coming out. So while I was the person that knew I really wanted to focus a lot on applied practice, there wasn't as much opportunity, and there was a lot of us students at the time. And at the same time, like I said, I also got exposure to the world of teaching and supervision and mentoring, and I really enjoyed that. And also, so I should say my dissertation was actually a bit of a call to the field, I guess I would look at it, on really needing to do a better job with training our students to do the actual real world practice of this work, because we spend a lot of time in our classes at that time. We spent a lot of time in our classes and in our textbooks talking about kind of the product of sports psychology, right? The mental skills, the theories, all that. there was really less time spent on the process. So like, how do you actually work with clients? How do you conceptualize a case? How do you figure out what the goals are going to be of the work with the client, and how you're going to approach each session and all that? There was really less of a focus on that, less case analyses and all that. So I think coming out of my kind of championing that for, almost 2 years, I think it was, that I was spending on that dissertation project, I was actually told by a colleague that I ran into at a conference that there was going to be a job opening up at Barry, and it seemed so attractive. Again, near my parents, was staying in Florida, and it really had the kind of 4 wheelhouses I really wanted to focus on. It had the teaching element, undergrad and grad, which I really enjoyed. It had the mentoring piece, to be able to help the master's students really start to learn how to do this work. The athletics department was really open to me working with them, my colleagues, our students working with them. So that piece, in the terms of the consultation on campus was really attractive, as a very successful Division II program. So that was a really kind of attractive piece of it. I was able to consult outside of that even. So again, kind of checking that box. And then from a research standpoint, the focus was more on teaching at that university, and we were really able to kind of carve our niche in research and really research the things that we wanted to. So it gave me a lot of kind of ownership over studying the things that I wanted to study, helping the master's students study the things that they wanted to study. So I think, as soon as I learned about that job, which actually, when I learned about it, was just a visiting professor position. So it was a 1-year position. It seemed like I was, again, so lucky to have heard about this coming right out of grad school, when so many of us were looking at how are we going to, continue on in this field. And then once I got there, I thought, well, this is a great place to start my career. I was really enjoying, like I said, kind of getting to work in all those areas. So I ended up staying there for 7.5 years.
Wow. Kind of a little longer of a question. So what are some of the other notable experiences that have kind of helped to mold your career to where you are thus far?
I think the one thing that's coming to mind for your question is that the diversity of applied practice experiences I had while I was in grad school. I wasn't one that, first of all, I came from a different sport, right? So it wasn't like I was, a soccer player, like I'm going to go work then with the soccer team. I kind of knew going into this that, like, all right, I might maybe get experience working with people from my sport. I'm not sure if I know I didn't know of anybody. So I think that openness and ability to work with such diverse groups was really a huge impact for a number of reasons, right? Because you get to experience different clients, different cultures, different team dynamics, different contexts and all that, but also in terms of being able to look across those and say, all right, what are the themes that I see kind of pop up in general, and how am I continuing to build kind of my knowledge and philosophy on this? And then also, what are some of the individual differences I need to take into consideration? I also got some experience working outside of sport with exercise clients and musicians when I was there. Like I said, inevitably impactful to study research on expert performance and get to do some of that work for 2 reasons. One, the group that I was doing it for, I was a grad assistant. So, Anders Ericsson, Dave Eccles, Paul Ward, Mark Williams, and now the co-host that I work with on my own podcast, Kevin Harris, who was a grad assistant as well at the time. Really impactful to be able to get outside of the sports psych field a little bit with that group and explore cognitive psychology, and all that has made an immense impact on the way I think about performance, the way I understand how our mind works, the type of things that I'm able to work with performers on. And then also the groups that I studied. So I was really, for the time I was there, mostly working on studying expert novice differences in SWAT police officers and critical care nurses. So really being able to exploring non-sport performance, high risk kind of occupations was really impactful. So I think it was a number of those different things. And then also teaching, teaching has been I think one of the biggest impacts on me, because it helps me continue to refine two things. One, my own knowledge and understanding of everything and my ability to explain it and apply it. And two, the craft of actually trying to teach others and help them understand information and make use of it. So I think that's another piece that's been really impactful.
So let's shift to talking about you being a performance coach, like exactly directly. Kind of a personal question. Why do you do it? Why are you a personal coach?
I love this question. I think I don't want to go with the kind of trite answer of I like helping other people. I think for me, there's really a couple things that are really rest on why I do it. One is I think that self-awareness can be really powerful. And it's very difficult to do all that work on your own, right? We can only achieve a certain level of self-awareness on our own without somebody else, some outside perspective helping us see certain things, asking certain questions, kind of holding up a mirror in front of us. And so I think that that's a huge piece of why I do this, is to be that person that acts as that mirror, that guide, that challenger, to be able to achieve that level of introspection that we can't get on our own. I think number two, I am a total nerd about the science. Like I love the science of this. I always joke with all of my students that I teach that I have one folder on my computer that is not so aptly labeled Sports Psych Toolbox. And it has several different folders in that of research articles and activities and exercises I do with clients, prompts and all that. And then another folder that's titled Articles to Read. On top of, as you can see behind me, some of my books that I read and TED Talks and podcasts and all that. I love it. I love learning about it. I love, continue the emerging science and are continuing to build our understanding about it. And when it comes to clients, I love helping them learn it and apply it to themselves. There's so many important things that we know about the way our minds work and the way that they impact performance, that we just don't ever get the chance to learn. And we might read, Twitter posts about them or, see some video on it and all that. But again, to me, it's about really helping to bridge that gap of helping bring, some of the nerdy science in with the self-awareness so that people can learn these important things about themselves and ultimately, obviously, be able to make use of them so they can, as I call it aptly for the name of my business, align performance with potential more often than not.
So continuing on from that, every coach is essentially different between whether approaches, theories, ideas. So what is it that makes you uniquely different from the rest of them?
I take from a philosophy and theory perspective, I take an eclectic approach. So I artfully, I think, combine several theories to try and really do two things. One is to try and make sense of this idea of what role the mind plays in performance, but also that obviously inherently drives my approach to working with clients. So I think being eclectic doesn't make me unique, but I think the way that I've kind of strung that together in terms of crafting my approach maybe makes me unique. Number two, I think, again, the diversity of the background that I was really fortunate to stumble upon and have the opportunity to have, which has really given me kind of three focus areas as a performance coach. Now, obviously the mindset piece and performance mindset. Leadership, really working with leaders, whether they are people stepping into a leadership role for the first time or, continuing to advance their leadership skills or dealing with particular leadership challenges. For example, like right now with COVID, how do I lead during these tumultuous times? And number three is probably the one I've spent the majority of my career on, which is team and organizational culture and really helping teams, companies, organizations intentionally craft a culture and do the very hard work of navigating that culture and aligning with and maintaining that culture, evolving it over time, dealing with the inevitable challenges that can confront cultures. I think that maybe makes me a little bit, where I should say, it makes what I can bring to the table maybe a little diverse.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So open up kind of the imagination here. So what does your future look like? And are there any specific milestones you wish to reach eventually in your career?
So I am probably the worst, although I know I'm not alone in this because I talk to a lot of colleagues. I'm probably the worst example for maybe the sports psychology field sometimes, because I'm a goal-driven person, as we as humans are. I am not a goal-setting person. So I am not that person that has the end of the year, next year, 5-year plan, 10-year plan. I've just never been that person. I'm very driven, but I am not that person that I feel like responds well, or maybe it's just that I've never been that person, so I roll with it. So I know what I'm currently working on, which is, as of December, 3 years now being in New York City, focusing on really trying to build a practice, and really think about what the question you just asked me, which is, what is my value add that I can really bring to the table, and mindfully choose the projects that I want to put together, the clients that I want to be working with, the types of opportunities I want to seek out, and what areas I want to do that in. I work a lot also now with a company that is wonderful called Valor Performance, working with people mainly in kind of various sectors of business, as well as the kind of tech startup sector and physicians. So digging into that work more and helping those clients in that company grow as well. And then continuing, honestly, I don't foresee any time in the future stopping teaching and mentoring either. I don't want to be in academia full time anymore, but I do really love helping to educate and train the students in our field, or the individuals in our field. And I feel honestly like a personal responsibility as part of the field to help it continue to grow and move forward. So I see that still in my future, despite trying to really step into and grow private practice even more.
Definitely. I know exactly what you mean, not being a goal setting person. That's
Okay.
exactly how I am. People ask me that question, I'm like, I can't tell you. I'm kind of just
Again, I want to clarify for both of us that does not mean we are not driven people. Just there's some nuance to a goal theory.
Well, to wrap up, I just want to ask, is there any advice that you have for any current students who are in this field, or just in general, any up and coming practitioners,
There's a lot. How much time do we have? I've been in this field for, if you count grad school, I think I'm coming up on 16, 17 years. So it feels like a lifetime at this point. So I think my one piece of advice is to really kind of, I'll say this one's a two-part advice. One is to make that mindset shift, right? So I know I don't think I did this well, honestly, when I was in grad school. I remember still kind of approaching grad school in the same way I did undergrad. It's like, I'm going to classes. Yeah, I have this supervision thing. As I went through it more, I really realized, and certainly then hindsight is 2020, you kind of look back and you go, man, like I should have looked at this like I was training to do this job, not just continuing my education. So I think it's really that mindset shift. And my second part to that is really viewing yourself as a performer and growing your performance capabilities. This is a really multidimensional performance that we have to do as coaches, whether you're doing, one-on-one meetings, you're delivering workshops, working with teams. There is a very nuanced skill set that you have to develop, a nuanced knowledge base and ability to, apply that knowledge and have kind of a scientist practitioner approach and really think artfully, intentionally about how you're going to do this work. And so I think as early on as you can kind of shift the lens to thinking about it in that way, you will do yourself and your future clients a service, right? Because you're now thinking about it almost like you're an apprentice rather than I'm just getting that next level of education. I wish I had really shifted that earlier. And I think in some ways I did, if I'm looking back at it, but I wish I had really intentionally made that shift earlier, particular as I was going through my classes and really, you know, trying to learn the material and apply it and all that. I think that would have made a lot of difference in how I was able to make use of that stuff that I was learning in classes. So I think that's number one. Number two piece of advice I think would be to think about your unique. I went to a workshop several months ago now, and it was really kind of about like marketing and publicity for coaches and people who are in, you know, service industry, own their own business. And that was really this woman's, you know, one of this woman's, I think, great pieces of advice was, you know, you can talk as much as you want about the field that you're in, the industry that you're in, and the value out of that, but why you? Like, what do you bring to the table? And I think that that's the wonderful thing about this field, but also the challenging thing about this field. We all come at this with such diversity of backgrounds and experiences and education and skill sets. But then at the end of the day, when we start thinking about applied practice, obviously, rightfully so, we're talking about, you know, sports psychology, mental coaching, and what that can do for the client. But I think we need to infuse that with, here's a value add I bring to the table in doing that work for you, and really crafting that. That was something that as I really shifted out of kind of the, I'm an academic and consultant, really shifting more to I'm a consultant who also still, you know, teaches and mentors, really trying to think about how I grow my brand and what my brand of doing this work is, what my, you know, value add is, what I bring to the table, and really trying to think about how I communicate that. Whether it's, you know, in conversations I have with people on my website, social media, any of that, but really thinking about it from that lens of obviously still keeping, you know, mental coaching at the forefront. I'm not saying, you know, talk yourself up and, you know, have this big ego, but think about what your, you know, your value add is and what you bring to the table from your nuanced skill set and background.
Sounds great to me. Dr. Tashman, I just want to say thank you for your kind words of advice and for taking the time to jump on this web series and share your experiences, your whys, your passions, everything behind it. So again, I just want to say thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Most definitely.